Okay, there are two lectures we're going to do now. Today, by the way, we're doing the lecture that's called Interfaces. Yeah. One thing I kind of remind you all the time about the syllabus is sometimes I tweak the order a little bit.
Okay.
Because if I see that there are certain needs, whether it's to change something or to change the order of something that we already have. And since you guys are already in a situation where you're ready to start writing, I brought these two lectures, which are normally 6 and 7, forward. So this one we're doing now. They're both related to the Getting Started section. I'm not sure if we'll get through both of them tonight because I want to allow enough time for you to do some writing, as you'll see. But this one here is about interfaces. So it's the...
Wait, are we on this one?
The one I just handed you out.
This one you just gave us.
This one also says information development.
Right, I understand that. Look at this one that I just handed out now.
The rabbit's
Rabbit's
ass.
butt?
Wait, yeah, the one with the
Okay.
back, with the one with the back butt of the rabbit. Okay.
Wait,
So,
I have another one as well.
yeah, but that's seeing the front of the rabbit.
We did this one already?
I'll
Yeah,
tell you
we
what,
did.
Ruth,
Yeah, okay, we did.
keep them all on the side, and I'll do it, when you guys start working, I'll actually go through that and we'll make some Seder. But I want to get started already. So, we are on interfaces, which is why we came up with the idea of about face. Okay? And we're on slide 3 now. We're talking about user interfaces. Wait a minute. Something happened here? Okay. Okay. The research that we're doing for these interfaces is going to be academic. Just kind of how we solve problems. And that's why the rabbits are asking how many of them are taking to change a light bulb. This is just another joke, just overlook it. And we're going to hardware interfaces, slide 6. First of all, on the user interfaces, you've got software interfaces and physical interfaces. Okay. I think that that's some issue here with this.
That's slide 4.
Yes, something's, okay.
And it's dead on, slide 4, 1, 1, 1 to 1.
Right, okay. All right, okay, so my copy was, all right. Okay,
Yep.
okay,
that's
we're
it.
good, we're totally good, okay. All right. So, if we're doing physical interfaces, software and hardware, which is slide 3, software has to do with, I don't know if anybody even remembers this, just want to look at it very, okay. Who recognizes the hardware on the left? It's slightly dated.
You're talking about the robot?
Yeah, the robot. Anybody recognize the robot?
I do, I just can't play. Isn't that...
Kind of dates all of us, and millennials might have a harder time.
Not
They would
a
visit different planets and they would, the crazy doctor, and I can't remember the name of the show.
It's called Lost in Space.
Lost in Space.
This was the first concept of a robot. And there was a whole thing about the physical interface. You basically talk to the robot, and the robot would speak in this very strange language, says that does not compute. And that's the way shows were made in the 60s and 70s, the campy science fiction. This was at the same time as the original Star Trek, even been earlier. And hardware, so we're going to talk about how you interact with hardware, and also how you interact with software, because we are working now towards writing a Getting Started section. So in slide 4, communication. 2 ways. Just as you saw the 2-way arrow on slide 3. In hardware, you command the system by buttons, keys, and touching it, lever. What's a very good example of where you use variations of it? One of the most obvious examples.
Hardware?
Hardware.
A car?
Car.
iPhone?
Excellent, a car.
Touch?
iPhone is both. You have physical touch
Yeah,
screen,
button.
but you also have software that runs it.
Right, like these are buttons.
Well, card, you have software.
Right, you
that
have
runs
buttons,
it,
that's
so-
right, you have
Now
buttons
you
on the
do,
phone.
but you did.
Those are hard, those are
Touch.
totally hardware.
Yeah, but we're
In the
talking about
past-
today, we're not talking about.
No, he's just saying in general.
Oh, okay. All right.
Previous versions of cars were strictly
Hardware.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
you're right.
Has anybody ever done transcriptions with one of these old dictaphones?
No.
Okay, so secretaries used to do all the typing. A lot of times the managers, they didn't have computers, and secretaries were working with typewriters, and there were typing pools. And what would happen is if somebody needed a letter typed or any other document typed, different managers and engineers would, either they would write it out by hand what they needed, or they would use what was called a dictaphone. A dictaphone was this small handheld cassette recorder. You spoke into it. Whenever you stopped, you take a pause, you just pause it.
Oh,
Very
I
straightforward.
used to have one when I was a kid.
Oh, there you go. Okay, they were still around.
You're that
Santa
old.
gave it to me.
Oh, and now you probably find those in a museum, right?
They're not that old. I'm young. They still have them when I was young.
Okay, so now what would the secretary typist do with the dictaphone tape afterwards? Anybody
That was,
remember
that
this?
was an hour of somebody talking to the dictaphone and 8 hours of a secretary typing.
Exactly. Now, what happened, by the way, I'm writing a book right now. And a big part of what I have to do is interview. I'm writing a book on the different alternative and pluralistic congregations and communities in South Jerusalem. And what I have to do is interview a lot of people, a lot of rabbis, a lot of teachers, a lot of movement leaders. And it's too much for me to write everything down to stop them. So I tape them. But now instead of using one of these dictaphones, I just use I use my smartphone and tape it from there. Then what happens is that you have to, and this is what the secretary typist did, they would put the tape into a machine at their desk, and they have to type on the typewriter, and later on a computer when they started using computers. So how do you simultaneously control the keyboard, the typewriter, or the computer, and also the tape? Because you have to keep starting and stopping the tape.
I'm going back and forth.
Right. So on their machines, they had pedals. So they would do their typing with their hands, and they would start and stop the tape with their feet. And I worked as an urban planner about 30 years ago. And we were still doing that. One of my jobs was to transcribe the minutes of meetings. We had important meetings, city council, local council, and regional council meetings. And we had to, and certain decisions were made and certain discussion was made. And I had that job times also, is to tape the session, and then it would take me half a day. The meeting went for an hour. If the meeting went for 2 hours, it would take me the whole day. Exactly as you said, to write up the minutes. That was my job the next day, was to write it up. And that's what I did. I worked with this pedal. So it's a hardware interface. I turned it on and off, and I started and stopped the tape by pushing the pedal, just like you do driving a car. And it was a single pedal. Push it down, the tape keeps moving. You let up on it, it stops. If I needed to go back and hear something again, I would have to rewind the tape slightly. But that's the way it worked. And so that's a classic hardware interface. On smartphones, yes, the hardware are the side buttons that are on the phone. The touch screen itself is hardware, but there's software integrated that's running on that hardware, because when you push the buttons to start an app, those buttons move around. And so just touching the button here or touching the screen here won't automatically give me what I want. The button that I need to touch, which is a software button, has to be under where my finger's going to go. So in terms of smartphones, touch screens on computers, it's the same thing. you're touching and moving things around, like Windows 8 has that. So, but look at my laptop here. This is a hardware interface, this mouse. The keyboard, both the external and the built-in keyboard, are hardware interfaces. But the moment I would use touchscreen, that would be software. And if I click, I use this mouse here, so this may be hardware, but if I click on the mouse now here, it will change the slide, but that's only because right now this PowerPoint slide is open, PowerPoint is open, and this part of the software interface says, click on me once, and I'll move it to the next page or to the next effect. I'll take it to the next step. But that's the software of PowerPoint that's working together with and saying, this is how I will respond to a click. This is very important because when we do the getting started section, what you have to talk about is behavior, how the system reacts. So,
I know it's personal choice,
Yeah.
but what is, and it's not fully developed yet, but what is your opinion on voice-to-text software?
I think it's fantastic if it's great. The question is how you use it. That's also part of what you're going to write about as technical writers, is the user experience. So there isn't a straight answer.
Yeah,
It's like, how much does food cost? And is food good or apples good? Well, whose apples? It's a very open question. So I think that it's an opinion that you'll come up with also, and that we can talk about if we start writing about it. It's an excellent question. It just has to be narrowed. And a lot of what we're learning in technical writing is to narrow things. So, in communication, we have hardware, buttons, keys, and touch. And in software, we have command lines, like you type in on Unix or DOS command line, like the manuals that I showed you before. You also have working with menus. Now from the file menu, select print to print. You have dialog boxes.
What's an example of a dialogue?
The dialog box? Okay, Word, for instance. We can,
You mean like the help?
no, dialogue means that it dialogues with you, that it asks you a question. Let's actually open.
Would you like to save your changes before you exit Excel or something? Is that it? When it pops up, it says, would you like to save your changes?
Okay, here I'm going to show you an example of a dialog box. I click Save. It's asking me, I'll choose something that's even more sophisticated. Here we've got Word on here. So let's open another Word document. And let's say I want to work the paragraph menu. I want to change something in paragraph, or the font. Let's open font. So open font.
That's a dialogue.
This is the dialog box up here. Okay? It's asking me different questions. It's dialoguing with me back and forth. It's more than just a simple command. If I just want to save, I can type Control S, Control Save, and that's it. On the other hand, if I want Save As, it will ask me a few other questions. Save where, save in what format. The moment it's asking questions, it's dialoguing with me. We talked before about concise speech, about how to write a minimum of words, and that's very important. So my own personal preference, when I write, I don't write the word dialog box when I do technical writing. The word box, I think, is, first of all, maybe a little bit outdated because they don't necessarily all look like boxes. Secondly, it's an extra word. I don't think we need it.
What, the dialogue word or the box word?
The box, the box. Yeah, you can just, but choose a style. First of all, choose a writing style that's similar to and consistent with how it's been written before.
How do you explain when this thing pops up? What do you call
So
it?
I just call it dialogue. I just call it dialogue. Microsoft
So this dialogue will
documentation.
ask you, for
Yes.
example, when you want to save something and you already have something with the name, it'll say, would you like to replace it?
Yes,
So
yes.
the dialogue will ask you if you would like to replace your document?
If it's asking you a question where it's yes or no, that's already a dialogue. Dialogue means that
I think
all
the
software is
question he's
dialogue.
asking is when you write a technical whatever, manual whatever,
Right.
will you use the word dialogue in referring
Yes.
to this box? Because honestly, if I read it, I never read a manual where it says the dialogue is going to open and then choose X and Y. Because
But again, it's the audience.
I wouldn't know
If
what
was
it
a-
is.
a
There we
lesser
go.
audience, you would
Right,
include
right.
box.
Exactly. So if you're writing on a low level audience, like the Windows for Dummies audience, then write the word box. If you're working with a higher level audience, then I wouldn't use the word box. So,
Okay, why don't you have a wireless mouse?
that's a good question. I do have a wireless mouse.
Batteries.
Yeah, and they don't know, and they have a habit of dying on you just when you want them to. You mean like Jason has? Yeah, like Jason's mouse. So, but that's a question of style, a question of who it's for. To give you an example about knowing your audience and what you just said, Eric, is Microsoft. Microsoft products are often tend to a lower level user. We're going to learn Word on a much higher level that 90% of the users don't know, because we're going to learn extra sophisticated activities like macros and other things that are not part of the normal knowledge base of your rank and file Word user. But for the most part, most of the users of Word are in a much lower level of computer knowledge. So Microsoft likes to write dialog box. On the other hand, Adobe. What Adobe products do we know? Photoshop,
Adobe Acrobat.
Acrobat.
I've a Pro, Adobe Pro. At
Okay.
work, I do anything, I've sanitized documents, I redact, I do what we do.
Okay, so this is already assuming a more sophisticated level of computer use. FrameMaker, PageMaker, which publishers use, part of Adobe. Illustrator. So Adobe's style guide for their own documentation, their own online help, calls them dialogues, not dialogue boxes. Because the audience for Adobe products tends to be a higher level of sophistication.
Well, they're expensive as hell, so if you,
They're expensive as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Expensive as hell.
I have the only copy for the entire office, like I'm delegated all the free.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't even work to get multiple copies, it's crazy
It's
expensive.
crazy expensive. It's ridiculous.
I am not ashamed to say this, and even to go on record to say this to technical writers. The more sophisticated the tools that you're going to use, first of all, your job will be easier once you know how to use these tools well, because you'll be able to do it, they're more robust, be able to do a lot more. But it also gives you a certain level of job security.
Oh, you bet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally feel it, that's true.
So,
No, sorry, why? What? Right?
You can make
be
yourself
proficient at this
invaluable.
higher list. You made yourself, and I'll tell you what, I know of someone very close to me that worked for Mercury, which later became HP, and they had a massive layoff. And they were technical writers that were working a lot many more years than him, more veteran in the company. He kept his job and they got fired, and they had to fire
It was more
people.
versatile.
He just happened to be the librarian in charge of all of the Adobe FrameMaker templates. And they were working with FrameMaker, and he had the strongest knowledge of it, and he was in control of that gate. He was a gatekeeper, like Sigourney Weaver on the original Ghostbusters. He was so important of a cog in that wheel that it was easier for them to let go of experienced writers who didn't have that knowledge, who didn't have that control. And as new writers, that's part of the edge that I'm trying to give you, is get out here, know some of these new tools and these new skills that I know my colleagues are not using. So many of my colleagues right now are still struggling with Word and working with Word. They're very good with Word. They haven't gotten past that because they haven't had to. They stayed in their comfort zone. And as you know, what happens in a lot of industries, not just tech writing, is that people, when they don't push past their comfort zone, eventually get passed up. So it's a real good idea to,
You know, how does it tie in with the fact that you only learn once there's a need for it? Meaning you only, sometimes there's stuff I need to do, so I end up researching Excel, whatever it is. So unless it comes up and you need to find a solution, I wouldn't really say it's a comfort zone. It's more like,
I didn't know.
would you just study stuff that might be completely irrelevant? That you may not-
Well,
how do
no.
you stay relevant? Like,
First of all, remember also that you're getting a driver's license here when you come out of the course. You're going to be learning all the time and constantly updating your skill set. What I try to do from my own experience is I see certain trends from having worked in the field for so long, and I have watched so many times people with a huge amount of experience become set in their ways, set in their comfort regions, and then the new writers just overtake them. And I've also had situations where older, more experienced writers have gotten rejected because the newer companies want somebody that's going to be flexible, that hasn't had as much experience and can be trained and is willing to be a team player, and not say, well, this has worked fine for me for 20 years, for 30 years, why change it? So, with all of that said, back to the whole thing about dialogues and dialogue boxes. Knowing your audience, knowing who you're writing for. The very fact that Adobe doesn't use the word box next to dialogue and just as dialogues means that Adobe and similar companies are catering to a higher level of sophistication, of audience, of user. And that's what I expect all of you to do. To be using these higher level tools when you can. As a new writer, if you're coming into a team that's already using something else and you're just learning the ropes, it's fine. Once you get to your own solo job or your own senior job, which can come like 2 or 3 years later, be ready to make those innovations. Be ready to push your comfort zone. If you're using these more sophisticated tools, people will be eating out of your hands because they're not all going to get licenses, like would say, for the Adobe products. And certainly FrameMaker, there'll only be one for the writers, or one for each writer, not for all the engineers.
by the way, just for system talks to user, did we cover that?
System talk, where are we now?
No.
No, we haven't covered that yet.
Oh, okay.
That's like Siri stuff?
Right. So we are on 4. Did you say Siri?
Yeah.
I have something that you're really going to like. I'm going to do it, show it during the break though, and now at the class. But since you mentioned Siri,
Forever.
okay, I think you'll like it. Okay, so all right. So system talks to user. System is what happens when the system comes back and gives you feedback. That means you get messages. It means that you get messages are very
It's a
specific to what
reaction
you're
to
doing.
whatever
Right.
command.
If you type in dir in a DOS in a command prompt, you get back the directory.
And
The
that's
system is returning it to you. And keep in mind here, we showed those different fonts in the style guide, in the installation guide, when it was bold and when it wasn't bold, when it's courier. So those are ways of showing what kind of communication is going on.
I mean, in theory, your example is the mouse and the cursor. So if you move the mouse and the cursor moves, that's the system talking to you.
Yeah,
I mean, most
Yes.
simple.
sure. Okay.
It's not fair. You're very masticated.
Okay. Again with that slide. Okay. So the hardware interface. We have touchscreen, keyboard, and mouse. Joystick. I don't know if anybody remembers this.
Hardware.
Joystick.
Wait, we
Used
don't have
mostly
this.
for video games.
We're missing, like, what about research academic?
Skip over to slide
6?
Yeah.
Slide 6. Hardware interface. Okay. Touchscreen, keyboard, mouse, joystick, and monitor. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Control panels. different switches and lights. Like these light switches here. Like if you look at the screen up here, the blue light tells you what the status is. Okay. Tell me about the remote that you use on a Yes box or a Hot box.
What do is that?
The remote control.
Remote control for my heater.
Okay. So tell me about what are we looking there at? What kind of interface is that?
What do you mean? It's the hardware, software.
And software. In the case of the remote, in the case of a remote control, let's say for a TV, you actually have a card, and the software is loaded onto the
Everything is
card.
not software these days.
What?
Everything is not software these days.
Well, when you have hardware and software together, and if it's loaded on there, it's called firmware. Sometimes software is burned directly onto the hardware, permanently burned on there to make
Called
it.
firmware.
Yes. And a great example of firmware is your BIOS on your computer.
The what?
It's called BIOS on your computer. It means that even if your disk is totally formatted and clean and doesn't even have Windows on it, or DOS or any other operating system, when you open it up, you get a setup menu, you get a startup menu. That's actually burned.
No, I always
on a
wondered about
flash.
that. I always wondered about that because if you reconfigure your OS, your operating system, I always wondered like, because that's the system that manages everything else. So if you're redoing, like, do you see what my question was? It was
Yeah.
just like, what if it just like crashes and you just have nothing? Like,
So you always start out with that.
you need like a point of life.
That's the point of that's the point of life.
That's the what? What do you
That's
call
the
it?
point of life.
The
It's
firmware?
called BIOS. It's also called CMOS. It's what happens when you open the computer, and if you have some kind of an issue that it's not loading the software, it's not loading Windows or whatever you need to load, you can, at the moment that you start it up, usually you can hit
I
a
see.
key
You
like
hit a key
Control
in the
Alt
middle of
Del,
the booting up process.
Yes.
Oh, that's what it is?
and that booting up process, that's firmware.
I hang a lot, I always watch what the IT guys do it, but now there's a name for it.
So firmware, write this in your dictionary. Firmware is hardware and software together. Usually means it's hardware
Yeah,
and
yeah.
software is
so,
burned onto
you
it.
know,
I'm trusting that
FIRMWARE.
be awesome too.
For software, by the way, you notice that icons came up here.
As icons.
Because you're used to thinking of icon as software,
What's the software?
but the original icons were actually also hardware. There were buttons, hardware buttons that would have some kind of a symbol on it. And so they were still
Maybe
considered.
like on a washing machine?
Yeah, one good example. See
They have
icons.
icons.
No, but there's icons that are like people understand universally
Right.
worldwide. Like imagine the toilet, the little symbols for like men and women. Everybody, even if you go to China, they're gonna understand that's for women, that's for men, because it's a symbol that
Exactly.
we all know, and I think it's according to these kind of warning symbols.
Yeah, but why would it be called an
Not
icon?
because
Usually
that's how
icon
it
means
Because it's a little figure. It's a little figure. It's like a hieroglyphic. It's instead of
What do you mean,
using
like the
words.
circle with the slash, that means the power button? That's an icon?
Yeah.
Actually, I can show
Other
you.
than icon.
Sure. Another.
Circle with that. You know how sometimes you have a switch that goes like this, right? And that's on and that's off.
Yeah.
Sorry, and that's
Yeah.
on and that's
Yeah,
off. Okay, so that's the circle with the slash.
Yeah, no, I didn't know those were
I was
icons.
so when I realized, I was like, yeah, sorry.
And by the way, buttons also can work in different ways. Like the light switch here, the button is on or off. But you also have a toggle button. Remember what toggle button is? Write that. Actually, you should write that down.
I
TOGGLE.
remember hearing
Button,
it.
yes.
That's big.
Toggle button is a different kind of button. So a toggle button means you push it once, it's on, you push it the second time, it's off. Maybe you have 3 different states. Who has in their bathroom
Some of them are
one of
gamers,
those
too.
blowers You know, especially at this time of the year, if you're taking a shower, you want some heat in the bathroom temporarily, right? Have you ever been in a shower room or a shower stall or
Yeah, have
bathroom?
you ever been in a
We
shower?
don't have that kind of luxury.
By the way, the faucets on the shower are also, it's also a hardware interface. It's sending a command.
And bio.
It's sending a command.
No, it's
For hot or cold.
not. It's a manual.
Right. That's a hardware interface.
It's not hard.
Anything
Why
that's
you arguing
manual
with
is
me?
also hardware.
Anything that's
No, what I'm
manual.
saying, it's physical. You're saying that even
That's-
purely physical, non-electronic,
That's what hardware.
So a hammer
interface
is
means.
hardware.
Yeah, That's a
It's more of
tool.
a tool because it's not actually attached as part of it. But I'll tell you what would be a hardware interface. Let's say
A faucet is hardware? Because you could directly
a faucet
fill
is
water.
definitely hardware.
Really?
Definitely hardware interface.
See, you
Well,
guys,
hardware.
like, you can find everything. It's like, now I see my kitchen faucet, I think
Mhm.
hardware.
Yeah,
Who
and
thinks
by the
it
way,
was
when
hardware?
you go to the
It's plumbing.
store and to buy hardware, which means a
Really?
faucet,
Oh, I see
absolutely.
what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay. Look at
So for question, the colors, the red and blue, meaning cold and hot,
yeah.
can that be considered an icon?
That's part of the hardware interface because it tells you if you turn it to the right, it's blue and it's cold, and if you turn it to the left, it's
Okay.
except for some strange reason in our house, our kitchen it came out reversed just because the way we put it on.
Yeah,
incorrectly.
that's just a hose underneath, you just
Yeah.
have to change them.
Oh, yeah, that's very simple.
Right.
Yeah.
how do you guys know this?
So let's
Yeah, cheap landlords.
go back to slide 5 for a minute on the top of page 3.
Yes.
Which slide?
Slide 5, on top of page 3, above the hardware interface, previous slide. The one with the rabbits? It says
Yeah,
recent.
is there anything without a rabbit? They're
We have some
proliferating.
frogs.
They're
We
proliferating.
get closer to Pesach, you'll see more frogs on these.
Yeah, and bacteria maybe.
But frogs, especially for Pesach. Wonder
As
why.
long as you don't print lice on them.
Exactly.
Please.
Yes. So, what's this question here? How many of the rabbits does it take to change a light bulb? The real question is, how many computer programmers does it take to change a light bulb?
You're actually expecting an answer, okay?
It doesn't even take a computer programmer to change your light bulb. It's my opinion.
The answer is no computer programmers. It's not a software problem.
It's a hardware problem.
Right. So much for great jokes.
That was a great joke.
Bazinga.
What? Bazinga?
I don't know if you know Sheldon.
Oh, is that a millennial term?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Kind of, yeah.
All right. So you like the video about millennials? I just found it today. It's a great one about looking for a job. So
Oh, I saw that one.
which?
The millennials looking for a job. The
Don't
job
say word.
interview?
Don't say word. Don't say
I won't,
word.
I won't.
Show it to them.
I wanna watch it. Just give it, write it down for me later.
Oh, yeah, I
during
think
the
I'll
break.
show
I'll
it
show it
in-
during the break because I still have it on my.
Bazinga.
Yeah, it's a 2-minute
That's,
video. You guys
that's
are
a
breaking
Big
the
Bang
sandwiches
Theory.
up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we talked about pedals. Now, I'll tell you something else about these icons with the men and ladies' rooms. Do you know how international that some of the icons are? Has anyone ever heard of the Voyager or Pioneer 10?
Just, what was it, satellite?
Pioneer 10 is an unmanned spacecraft that, as we are speaking now, it's heading into the center of Alpha Centauri. It was launched
Oh, was
from
it
Earth.
in the 70s or something? It was
Right.
launched, and then it was supposed to have died, but then it resuscitated itself
In the
recently, and then it just kept going and transmitting stuff.
Right, well, the-
Basically, it's way off into the.
It's right to the next stellar system, which is Alpha Centauri. Is our
And it has like
closest
less
neighbor.
software than my iPhone.
Right. So that it also has a hardware interface with icons, and some of our
Oh, the disc?
now what it has is on the outside of it. Even when it finally burns out, uses up its battery and whatever else it
Is
is.
it solar powered?
solar powered, but even beyond that, the idea is to reach out if there's any life out there. They will see icons. They find the ship, men and women,
Are they 3D?
and a map.
Are they 3D?
It's on a
Yes.
disc. It's a
It's on the
disc.
side. It's on the side of the
A
spacecraft.
gold
Yeah, but
disc.
what do you mean it's called? No, but is it a picture or is
It's a
it?
picture. It's a picture.
Well, I have to tell you that,
And it has a map showing these aliens, if they're out there and they're intelligent enough to be able to find the spacecraft and understand what this man and women means, and this map means, they can find us, they can find Earth.
So
And-
funny, we don't even know if they're nice or not. It's like you're telling your mother where you live just in case, but maybe you still
so
need
there
it.
are such things as aliens. I just want to make a point that.
Independence Day and V and a bunch of other sci-fi
Actually, you watch
movies
way
were
too many
based on
movies.
this.
You watch way too many movies.
Okay.
Like all your references are movies. I just want to make one point that in more primitive cultures, when they showed them drawings, like two-dimensional drawings, some of them had issues and problems interpreting two-dimensional drawings into
Mm.
representations of human form. Like for example, if I draw a smiley face, you all know exactly what it is. But like in some of these societies, like they would never know. They didn't have a bridge, psychologically speaking, to link a smiley face with a human face. Like they. So if that's people on Earth having different artistic interpretations,
Than people somewhere else.
what do you expect? Like what?
It's a good question.
No, I'm
It's a great
serious. It's a
question.
psychological
We're still
narrative
making a
there.
certain assumption and psychological narrative, you're right. But yeah, and I think Marcel said we're actually showing some aliens that might not be friendly to us where we live exactly, where to find us. But I think there must have been tens of movies that were based on the idea of some alien finding that map, finding something similar. There was Starman, I think, with bridges and whatever. There were a few. There were
Oh, that's a good movie.
V and
It was a series, but that
yeah,
was a
but
good
V was
series.
also based on it, and a bunch of other Independence Day, and a bunch of them were based on the idea that the aliens saw one of these probes that we launched and used the map to find us. So maybe Tamara's right, taking a risk there. But
If there
that's
are
the
aliens, I would highly doubt that we would ever
They'd be-
encounter them
I
because the
think the
universe is so
closest thing we
vast.
have to aliens nowadays is all these artificially intelligent robots. I think the closest thing to that is like these weird ass sex dolls that they're producing nowadays.
what?
Have you
What?
seen them? They
What's
actually,
the aliens
I learned about that in my digital communications classes in the university, and they actually have these humanoid robots that they're creating. Scientists, yeah. They have these humanoid robots that they're creating that their software is similar to that of an algorithm of like Siri that like get used to your voice, so it starts understanding your accent better and better over time, and they have like they feel like people, they're soft, and they actually have this thing where they really look like me sitting there. They just sound
Scary.
still a little
Yeah,
bit
but how do you know
retarded.
aliens are physical at all? Maybe they're not. Maybe they're like plasma.
Anyway, let's go on. So, for software, you have command lines, data forms, dialog boxes or dialogues, and screens and windows, which is more for a graphic user interface. We're on slide 7. Yeah. And again, icons, but this time these are icons that you click or tap. And other navigation tools, like the scroll bars, you click and drag. Zooming in and shortcuts. Shortcuts could be like Control S for save. The idea is to have them to be user-friendly. Now, some others that you have would be DOS and Unix prompts. Typing in the line and pressing enter. There you have to write an exact syntax. You have data entry forms where you fill in a field.
That's like in Excel when you have to put in a formula. Particular-
Yeah, Excel is.
I just copy paste from what I find online, but it's like if I want to do a table with alternate shading,
Mm-hmm.
so there's just like a little thing. Yeah.
All right, so let me show you something.
On Excel, it's like you program the Excel.
Let me show you a few examples, actually. Okay. We have a few
Wedding
people-
hikers?
Yes, wedding hikers. I am a very avid hiker. It's one of the things I'm even obsessed with. Love hiking.
Okay, you're getting weirder and weirder.
Okay.
I just see all these hikers in like really dirty wedding dresses. Hiking boots.
You should see the icon that I used for the WhatsApp group that I created. What's happening is that I'm invited to a wedding. A friend of mine in Kibbutz Saint Sarim, and turns out I'm invited there with 10 other people that are also avid hikers. And there's a mosaic hiking weekend down in State Beaucaire. And so we suddenly had to figure out, we are staying there for 2 nights, and how we managed to organize ourselves and come in and join this hike, and without disturbing the 20 or other people that are already driving straight there from Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or wherever they're coming from. So I created this form to say, okay, we are a very special needs group, there are 10 of us. This is a form on Google, it's a Google form. So what I said is we're creating this form, fill out the form, right? And so here are the questions that you have. What you've got here is what's called a radio button. Write this down. Your dictionary. A radio button, if you remember the old radios, and even on the digital radios you have now, means you can only choose one. You can only choose one channel. You can't play 2 channels on your radio at the same time.
I see.
So it's called a radio button. And the reason they're called radio buttons is because they go, the old radios had literally these push buttons that were physical buttons, not even like the digital ones you have in
The old
cars
car
today.
radios too.
The old car radios. Exactly. And the old, anybody remember 8-track tape recorders?
Yeah.
You could switch channels also on those. And CD players, I think, also have a function where you can
track.
jump from one or CD track, based on the same idea as the 8-track tapes. So you choose one of them, right? And then what I've got here are called check boxes. Because here I can only choose
Oh wait, so
one.
the radio button is like when you click one, like, but then if you click the other one, it disappears.
Right. So here what I'm going to do is, let's choose one now. We'll fill out one now. Okay. Wait a minute, I want to do a lot.
What's the average age for that group?
For this group? The average age for the group, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
How big is the group?
There's some people in their 20s, or a few a bit older. Well, we'll probably have about 30 people at the hike, but overall about 300 people that are in the group altogether. And I also run another hiking group called Friday Friends Outdoors that does a lot of hikes in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem areas, day hikes on Fridays.
I might be interested.
Okay, all right,
I'll check it out.
all right.
I need a little bit of a social life.
It's a great way to make friends.
Understatement.
So
Thank you.
let's look at the form. You see, I'm going to do this to view a live form. I think this is, let's see, view live form. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Here we go. Hang on. Nope. Okay, here we go. So here are the questions. You choose one of these. Then you can choose any of these because the checkbox allows you to choose more than one. And this is how your dialog boxes work in Word or where else. Then you have another kind of answer, which is a short answer. Am I coming to the wedding from where, or am I not coming? My first and last name are text. I'm being asked for text and asked for a phone number. And so these are all text fields. Short answers or longer answers that are paragraphs. Now, how do we look at the responses? So this is the data that we're getting. What I'm looking at now,
Oh,
here are some statistics. So far, and this shows the color. So orange means coming to the wedding only, and 50% responded that way. and 50% responded yes, and they already registered for the hike. So they also, besides registering for the rides for the wedding, they also have to sign up for the hike. So they actually, in this case, have to fill out my form for the carpools and another form for the group for the hike. And now if I look here on the Google Sheet, I can see the responses. So,
Wait, it sets it up for you? This is like
Yeah.
Excel.
yeah, it's like an Excel, Google Sheet. It works like an Excel. You can download it as an Excel also. And if you upload an Excel to the Google Drive, you can convert it to a sheet. The Google Sheet is the equivalent of an Excel. This is free. And so, see what you see here.
They're all English speakers?
Do
On
they know
that
that
particular
you're
group,
at-
you
that
need to have good
you're-
English. I mean, there are Hebrew speakers, there are French speakers, but it's predominantly an English-speaking group.
Do they know that you're giving away all their phone numbers and private information?
They're not. Camera's trained on me here, not on that.
Actually, the
It's-
camera's
it's-
trained on your belly right now.
Oh. Okay. All right. So, you understand, this is how you're creating a database. And when you all got interested in the technical writing course, there was a similar form that you had to fill out. When you first, what we did is we announced the course, and then we put a link to a form that was similar to this one. You filled it out, and we get the data like this. And have you noticed that if you go to some events, even if they're free events, they say the event is free, but you have to pre-register?
This is one.
Why do you think they're doing that?
Stats?
Yeah, but also it means that
Email you back.
they're going to give you this class for free, or this show for free, or concert.
Forever
But
with
they're gonna-
marketing.
No, they're gonna sell your details.
It's a
Well,
hook.
if technically they could, unless there's something on there that says, where they're promising not to, but at the very least, they're building a database. It means that they can send you more information. Whenever I announce a hike for my Friday Friends Outdoors group, one of the choices you can have is if you're not coming to the hike, but you want to be on the list and be informed of future events. And so I'm building a database. And
Are these free?
databases in business, yeah.
Are these hikes for free?
The hikes that I run, the day hikes, that are free. You have to usually, it's your transport to get there. If you're carpooling, then you have to share with your driver. We help set that up. Also, you need a ride, who can you drive? We match people up. And if there's admission to the park, you have to pay for the admission. Although what I recommend everybody to do is to get a MON card, get one of these national park cards.
National park cards.
If you use it 3 times a year, you've already paid for the card.
Yeah.
And it's unlimited. And especially if you're new in Israel, and I've been here for 30 years, I think they're a good idea because they force you
Yeah,
again to
they're
get out.
amazing. They're amazing.
So you see what I did is I generated a database. And back to our slideshow. So this was the equivalent of a data entry form. If you looked at here. Fill in the fields, and you navigate by tab or direction keys, menus, or a mouse. You also have what's called hybrid, which is sometimes DOS. By the way, everybody knows what
What is
I mean, when I say
DOS
DOS,
and Unix?
Not entirely.
DOS was the more original system for PCs. Now it's basically known as the command prompt, because now Windows loads up directly. But when they started using Windows, like if anybody remembers Windows 3, Windows 3.11. So Windows 3.11, you started your computer and it was still running in DOS, and then you had to type in Win or Win 3.11 or something like that to get Windows started, because it sat on top of DOS. Now DOS is the basic operating system. So like here, I can
Apple
type
has
in the
it too.
command line interface.
Apple has an it has a
Apple has
different name.
DOS?
It's
Mac
not
has
DOS.
DOS.
It's not DOS. It's got a different name, but it's got a.
But it is a DOS. It is
It's
a
a
form of
BIOS
DOS.
operating system?
No, it's an excellent question. BIOS is if I right now restart
So
my
there's
computer.
BIOS, then DOS, and then another layer which is Windows?
Which is Windows, right.
Why?
Nowadays, the Windows and the DOS are together in the same layer. and Windows comes up instantly. But it used to be exactly like you said, BIOS, started up the computer, then you were in DOS, where you got this command line, you could just work with that. And if you wanted Windows, you actually had to type in WIN, which I don't even think works anymore.
So now you're in the DOS stream. What does DOS mean?
DOS means disk operating system. Yeah, write it down. It's
Terminal.
amazing how stuff becomes
That's what
really.
it's called, terminal.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
What is it short for again?
What?
What is it short for again?
Disk operating system. The original Apples before the Macintosh came out. The original Apple machines were also on a disk operating system, and worked with them. You put in a floppy disk.
You had to put in a floppy disk,
Right.
and that was your program. And you know,
What do you mean?
I had helicopter.
And you had to actually write. You were writing programs. The old computers,
What do you mean?
people.
There was no Windows? What do you mean?
No, there was
No.
no Windows. There was no OS.
That
there was
was
nothing.
Web
It was
01, no?
literally, it was
Yes, like this.
seemed like this. You put a floppy disk. It would read the floppy disk.
Yeah.
Remember the noise?
Yeah.
And then it would open the program that you had in your floppy disk, and the biggest memory was like I remember when the megabyte came up.
Mm-hmm.
It was 400 bytes or 600 bytes, and it was a lot.
Since you asked this question, I'm going to give you guys another little fun homework. Maybe it's not as important for you, but it's something in addition to what we're going to do. I want you guys to just do a short Google search, research it. I'm going to give you a few names of old computers so that you have an idea, because we will later on be talking about hardware, and it's a good idea to find out where things came from. So write down these terms and just kind of look them up. Commodore 64, spelled like this.
He knows that.
Commodore 64, I hope I spelled it right.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Another one is called the original, let's say Apple IIe and 2C. Okay. Original IBM PC with MS-DOS and PC-DOS, which were two.
Commodore predates me, but Apple IIc, I don't remember.
Right. Right. Oh, and the one that I started with was Radio Shack PRS-80.
I think it's Radio Shack, not Shake.
Yeah. You're right.
Radio Shack or
Shack Radio.
Yeah, that was definitely before me.
Yeah.
Radio Shack what?
That store doesn't even exist anymore.
No way.
Radio Shack?
Yeah,
TRS-80?
Yeah.
they went belly up.
Yeah, I wonder.
Well, they had a very good run. It's like Blockbuster. They may have gone belly up in the end, but people made a lot of money over decades.
But I was still sad to see it go.
And Apple, by the way, used to be called, when they started the Macintosh, and beginning of the Macintosh, which was called the computer for the rest of us. That was their brand. Why was it called the computer for the rest of us?
The IBM was humongous.
And also, everybody was having to write programs. People didn't want to do, and BASIC. Language, it's called BASIC. Not Visual BASIC that you see now, but the original BASIC.
An interesting movie that you guys may want to see to really start understanding.
Tron?
Have you seen Tron? No. Hidden Numbers. It's actually a newer movie,
Okay.
and it's this computer brains, this human computers that worked for NASA to calculate the trajectory for
Black one?
the Apollo.
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Calculate the trajectory for the Apollo mission
I saw that
and all this
movie.
stuff.
That's a good one.
Because they didn't want to let women, they didn't want to let blacks get involved, and
And
until
then she went to the bathroom like kilometers away.
Yes,
Oh, poor
correct.
lady. I love
Now,
that
if you
movie.
remember, that's the beginning of computers, and the computer took a whole room.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be by cards. I remember seeing those cards. It's just the beginning of computers.
Has anyone seen Ex Machina? If you want to think about robots again.
X what?
Ex Machina?
Yeah.
David, have you seen it? Oh, you
So
should.
if you wanna- if
I think
you're
I watched too many.
Interested-
That's your homework.
That's pretty similar.
Seriously, that is your homework. That's a movie you
And
have.
that's pretty similar to the robot that I was
Ex
talking about
Machina.
earlier. Like it's definitely
but that's
human. It's
crazy.
more advanced.
Yeah,
But the
that's
robot that they have today looks like the robot in Ex Machina. Like
Okay.
Yeah,
very
true.
realistic.
I have to say though, that if I would have brought up that robot, I would have been judged. Just saying.
Okay. So look at slide 9. Just look at it on your sheet. I'm not going to run it yet on here because you have it. on
Slide
paper.
9, you said?
Slide 9. What I want to do here is that as where it says CLI. CLI, write this down by the way. CLI is called Command Line Interface.
What?
CLI is Command Line Interface. So that means basically you're typing in something here. So here I'm going to hit enter. It's going to. I mean, you notice I'm getting a message now from the computer because what I typed in was gibberish, basically, not commands. So an example of command line interface. How do I find out what's on the disk in this directory? Do you know? Let me look for the directory.
What's really fun to do is del asterisk dot asterisk.
Yeah, delete everything, all the
Yeah,
files on your disk.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here, I'll look at the directory, type in dir. That is a DOS command. And the DOS and BASIC are very similar languages. There are some commands that work in both. One is related to the other. So if I type in dir, that's my command. Hit enter. And what am I getting now?
It's all your file.
What I'm getting is a message. I sent a command.
Is this everything's on your PC?
No.
So
In
it's
this
specific
ca-
bytes?
Well, it's everything in this case that's under that folder. In that folder, in that directory.
What folder,
See.
what directory?
Users/FE.
Right. So let me also
Oh, but you set that up in Windows.
another command. Another 2 terms to write in your dictionary. Folder. And write in there. Folder equals directory.
Huh?
They're the same thing. If I were in Windows right now, where it says here users FE, I would see that in Windows using Windows Explorer, which you're used to using. But in DOS, it's like this. You see what's called a path. So look over here.
Wait, could you show us exactly how this is imitated in Windows?
What's he saying?
Yeah,
It'll be
my-
represented by the actual
Explorer.
the folder.
No, I
Right.
just want to see if it's exactly the same.
Right. So I'm going to show that to you right now. First of all, this, what you're seeing here, where it says C users FE. Right? C slash, what does the C stand for?
The hard drive.
Right, it's the hard drive. And then you have this colon. And then what am I seeing after that?
Yeah, what are the backslashes mean?
Backslashes with the names of the directories are path. This is the address.
Oh,
It's like
really?
telling the aliens, this is where we are, this is where Earth is on the map. I'm saying this is where we are right now. We are in C/1 directory, another backslash the subdirectory. Directory in DOS is a folder in Windows or in any other user and when I say DOS, by the way, if we talk about Unix, it's the same thing in Linux, because that's another command line interface. It's called Linux. And if I'm using Windows or some other Unix graphical user interface, they will use folders.
Windows is Unix?
DOS and Linux would be equivalent because they're both command line interfaces. And the terminology for DOS or Linux. Linux means Unix is line interface, which is their short way of saying
What?
command line
It's
interface.
completely lost me.
Okay. A command line interface means,
Wait, this is DOS.
right, this is DOS. So let's look
Okay.
at slide 9. A command line interface means that we log into the appliance, we have certain prompts, and we have to type in a command string or the name of a program. We're actually typing in.
Where does Unix come in?
Looking at where it says prompts on slide 9.
Right, no, I see that, but
Okay.
how is Unix
A
related?
prompt, let's write, you're asking a very good question. See, this is an example also of what happens sometimes in the class. There are things that people in previous courses a couple of years ago didn't know about Word that you all know. But this stuff everybody knew. This stuff has been forgotten.
I have never had the need to use
Exactly.
it at all.
Right. But my generation, and maybe some of the rest of us in the room, remember when you did have to know this.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's been forgotten. So we actually will spend less time on some of the things that I used to spend more time on, and we'll spend more time on this because this
Got it.
is not known. All right, so let's take ourselves a step further back. What we're looking at here is the path. Path means the location. Write the word path. Path means the location on disk. Location of whatever.
Mind you, when you are working with files, when you open your files, it's the same thing. You have a path on top. You have
Yeah.
to navigate through.
But you
Right.
can visualize it. That's the difference.
But you can visualize it here. It's C users FE.
Yeah, but it's more text, it's not graphics,
Wait,
right?
partially correct, because way before Windows and graphical user interfaces got so sophisticated, there were some more primitive solutions in DOS that did the job. So, for instance, I want to see all of these here. I can type in, if it still works, because some of the commands have also gotten lost, the word tree. See that?
What do you type?
Tree,
Tree?
yeah. Now, does this look kind of familiar?
No.
You're told your files.
Oh,
are
it's
where
like
they're-
it's like Explorer except like clunkier.
Right, exactly, clunky, look how I'm not even sure if I don't think it'll allow me to navigate to any of these, but that's the idea.
Can I ask something?
What the hell are we looking at?
Sure?
So,
It's
I
like
bet-
And that's a
Explorer, but
command.
without-
I typed in a command called tree.
Right.
You
So it's
actually
everything
write this-
on your hard
So-
drive except not accessible by clicking on it and no icons. It's pretty much the same thing.
It's a map.
Like I see,
showing
it's
the
the
three-
folders and subfolders.
Right. What was your question, Tamara?
my question is this. What I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is like my command prompt window. I can type any type of command, say I want to have the location of file X. I know how to write the command, it's going to pop up.
Yeah, if you know how to write the command.
Exactly.
so what
Now
you-
my question
Yeah.
is the following.
But before you ask the question, I want to add something to what you just said.
Okay.
Okay, and then ask your question. What you just said about if you know how to write the command, and this is very important, and this is one of the reasons why Steve Jobs and the Apple people came up with the Macintosh operating system that later also became Windows for PCs. Windows is derived out of that, and Macintosh, by the way, is we're not the first ones either. But what happens when you have a command line interface, you have to be exact. You have to type in the exact syntax. Write in this word, syntax. It's also on your slide, on slide 9. It says you type in line and press enter, and you have to write the exact syntax. Two things can happen if you write in the wrong syntax.
It'll say it's gibberish.
Or you'll fuck something up.
Thank you. Both of you have the two answers. It's what I often refer to as a type 1 bug and a type 2 bug. The type 1 bug is it just doesn't work, and that means you're lucky. You didn't create any damage, it just didn't work and you can try again. The type 2 bug is what Eric just said. You can screw something up. Like typing in DEL space star dot star.
Yeah.
What's that?
Try it. No, actually,
No, don't.
Actually,
You got somebody you really want to get revenge on?
yeah.
Tell them to try it.
Just it basically deletes absolutely everything in your computer except for the firmware, but everything else is gone.
If you're lucky, there will be a prompt saying, "Are you sure?"
And then you press yes or the Y key and then enter again.
So yeah, now could I come to the question?
In the second.
'Cause
By the way, you know what we used to have the equivalent in summer camp for
Answers
that?
it.
It was called X-Lax brownies.
You didn't get that.
Huh?
Huh?
Baked brownies, someone, and then they spend the rest of the day.
So my question is this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm smart enough to write the command,
Mm.
know my syntax, type that command, boom, give me some sort of drop-down list for whatever,
Mhm.
and I find the file that I want to have, right? And
Okay.
I have my old-fashioned computer, I don't have a Windows or whatnot, so I want to open that file. You just try to click on one of these directories and it didn't open. So how do I then physically open, or physically, but virtually open the file?
Okay.
Right, or like how do I do something with with the command that I just gave? Like how do I actually operate? Because all we do
So you
is
just
you
write
type
the
some
path,
sort of
like you
command
said.
and you get a path.
So you
get a
write the
list.
path.
But what are you able to do with this list that you're getting now?
You
This
see
looks
the
to me-
path and you can write it and just put slashes where the lines are.
But what do you actually do with it? Like what function does it give?
Okay, so we're going to do something right now here. It's a demo.
I have a parenthesis before.
On her question?
No, on the continuing explanation. How critical is this?
Very,
Oh, perfect. Then go for it.
yes. You need to know this.
Sure.
You need to really be comfortable with it. How? Because some of the work that you're going to do will involve documenting command line interfaces.
Excellent. I just
And
wanted
if you
to-
can't do it, your value is very limited as a technical writer.
Is there
because-
like a list of all the commands?
Yes.
It's huge.
How do you think I can
there's
have
some
the
sort
book.
of dictionary.
Right, how do you think, who wants to take a guess on how I get that list?
Internet?
What?
You
You
will-
put it in the, you put list?
That's a very millennial answer.
Siri.
It's
Sorry.
coming during the break.
I know.
Okay, so the answer is, how do you look for it in Windows?
Isn't there a directory of
I'm looking for a keyword.
commands?
Yeah, but since your
Excellent.
paradigm is Windows till now, think about what it is. What do you call it? When you want to get assistance?
Help?
How do, yep.
In DOS it's called help?
F1.
Really?
That's where it came from.
Well, click it and enter. Ooh, there's your book, Michael.
Sure.
It's a book.
Wait, could we print this out?
No, you can.
Oh, I see tree. Graphically displays the directory structure of your
But that doesn't really help you much. Like, yes, you're right, but
Of course it helps.
no, but navigation in and out of folders, I forgot how to do it, and that's not going to show you how to do that.
Oh, yes, it does.
It does?
Mhm. This shows what commands currently work on here. Some of them are actually separate programs that run in DOS. Others are commands that are built into DOS. There are utilities that you can install, like the Norton utilities, especially the old Norton utilities. You would install it and you could run it from here. When you type in a command, it will either run that command or it will execute that file that is that command. Most of the commands now have an extension of .exe, sometimes .com, as in command, not as
Meaning
in .com.
it won't execute unless you add that.
No, it means that by default, it will run anything, any command that you type in, any word that you type in, if it exists as either a, I write these extensions actually, .com, which means command.
In what?
These are extensions.
In Word?
It means that you have a file name
In
dot-
wait, in Windows?
in DOS.
the command
DOS,
line
in the command line interface, which is DOS.
Wait, when you download an update to Adobe, whatever Adobe's asking you, Adobe Reader.
Don't think in Windows.
No, but then you download something and it says .exe. Do you want this to run?
Right. So
But that's
.exe.
in DOS.
That's in DOS also, yes. You can.
Oh,
run-
really?
Right.
Why?
Whether that particular exe, by the way, I'll give you what these all mean. .com means it's a command file.
Execution.
.exe means it's an executable file. And .bat, like baseball bat, is called a batch file.
Which is what?
Batch file is a set of commands. We're going to write some today. Who brought a computer besides Michael? Anyone else?
Yeah, mine's a Mac.
Okay. So I'm gonna have you.
Every
play
time
a
we
little
bring
bit
it,
with
we don't use it, so I just.
But now you're going to be using it a lot more, so bring it when you can. Okay, so a batch file is a set of commands. We're going to do that. These are the different commands you have here, like CMD starts a new instance of Windows Command Interpreter. And CLS just clears the screen. I type in CLS, everything is cleared out. So, do you want to set the time? Anybody want to know what time it is? Time? You can change the time. And you have other, you can copy files and directory trees. Title, you can set a window title. These are now.
Wait, and how do you get to this from Windows?
Like this, you use the this command line here. You can type here. You can type in commands too. Like if I type in Word, I'll be offered Word.
Although that's not a search, it's actually a command line.
Yes.
It's not actually.
It actually, if you
No,
really
but
want
how
to
do you get
search
to
your
the
disk,
console?
you don't even want to use this in Windows 10 because it won't find it. It will often send you to the internet to look for something rather than on your own disk. If you actually want to search for a file, you're better off doing this, going over here, typing in the search over here.
Wait, so how do you get to the DOS box?
So I want to get to DOS box. I just type in the command here,
CMD, right?
CMD. It gave me the command prompt.
Yeah, but that would mean that you have to actually know the name. If you've forgotten the name, where would you find it within your files? Or within your applications? Or, sorry, within your programs?
What, the command prompt? There's probably an icon in there. I haven't looked for it in Windows 10. So, because this works, why bother?
No, I understand, but I know, for example, in my Mac, because I never
there, it's
will
there.
remember
If you
that,
look-
I
if
know
you-
exactly
yeah.
where to look for it.
Right, exactly. The Mac was originally set up for people who didn't want to use
Their brains?
DOS.
Oh, sorry.
You know what? I didn't say it.
No,
But it was definitely made to bring down the level because the idea of being able to click with a mouse and be able to work with graphics.
GUI, the whole GUI
Lower-
interface, which is why they became who they are, it's so that people don't have to remember things. They just can see it and click on it. And I like it because I have my brain for other things.
How many people have good handwriting these days? It looks like you have good handwriting.
Yeah, I do. You
Lot-
can't beat that shit.
Sometimes. You have a really crazy.
Fewer and fewer people have good handwriting now because they're just used to doing everything on some kind of digital device.
That's not fair. I'm ADD. I don't have patience.
Okay.
Actually, there are some studies that claim that people that have an ugly handwriting are actually really intelligent.
Mhm.
And left-handed people are supposed to be more intelligent too,
I agree.
according to
Thanks.
studies.
I'm a lefty.
I'm not
What?
American.
Okay, so, okay, so here's another command in the command line. I'll show you how to write a batch file. Look up at this, you gotta look at this. What I'm going to do is,
Why does it bring you to users FE? If you
because
want-
that's my oh, that's right.
Because
Somebody
you're
also
logged
asked
in
me-
as FE
Right.
on Windows?
Yeah, so somebody asked me a question about how this would look in Windows. So this is allowing me, because I'm actually entering DOS through Windows, so it is allowing me some kind of mouse functions, which it didn't before. So I'm selecting that, and it's not letting me copy it though. But we'll open up a folder right here, and let's open up another one here. Ready? Okay. Watch this. See? Users. FE. If I click over here, it even gave me a shortcut here with an icon. Let's look for something that's a little bit more normal. How about
Users.
see pictures? Okay, see pictures. So when I click on it, it has see pictures. Right, that's the folder. It means if I look at it here, as a folder, it's showing see pictures. That's the path. And it shows it up here. See pictures.
How does this relate to DOS?
It's gonna show you.
So now we're going to go to DOS.
You're patient.
And we're going to change the directory. So I can type in change dir or just cd. If I do just change dir without anything, it'll tell me where I am. Users FE. Now how about change dir to /pictures?
How does it know it's on the C drive?
Because by default it'll stay on the same drive wherever I
Unless you
am.
indicate another drive? Got it.
Exactly. So here. And now I'm
What,
missing
what
page.
does it help you? What do we do with this as opposed to Windows? No, because like in Windows, you can get in, see a picture, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, but what's your...
Because you're going to have to do things. Remember, we had a week ago about respecting and allowing different alternatives for somebody to upgrade the
Got
system.
it, got it.
So you have to be able to show them how to do this in a command line
Got
system.
it.
And something else, if you've got heavy operations to do,
You don't want it working
It's
in
much
Windows?
faster.
It's
No,
much
you don't want it
faster, 'cause
working
it's
in
more, got it.
yeah. So
Wow, cool.
there's some rumors that
I've always like been like, it's always been like, I don't know what this is. Because like I've never had to use it, but I know it's there.
and you have to know it as a technical writer.
We used to write on that.
And these engineers that are twice your age that you're working with, they remember it. They're not so great at Windows, but they remember this.
No,
And
it's
you-
good. If they give me commands and whatever, I can.
And you may be writing stuff for them, and they may still not be very sophisticated with regards to Windows or graphic user interfaces, but they're old school engineers, and they have to run certain programs in a very simple way, and on a very robust and fast way. They'll work with this. Same thing for systems that run on Unix. Most of-
Wait, stop, because that was my question 20 minutes ago. What is it, what's,
Unix is just another computer system. It's another
Instead
kind
of
of computer. Unix is another kind of hardware as opposed to a PC, as
Hardware?
opposed to a Macintosh. A Unix is a machine, is a physical machine. A Mac is a physical machine, A PC is a physical machine, that whether you're talking about a PC desktop or a PC laptop. You also have Mac desktops and laptops.
So Unix is DOS for Unix machine?
Unix is a different kind of machine. It's not a PC that normally runs Windows and DOS. It's not a Mac that runs Mac OS. It's a different kind of machine. And it's actually older than the other two.
But it's
So and it
for
runs on
servers.
Unix?
What?
It's server.
A lot of servers are running on Unix. A lot of internet runs on Unix.
And Unix is also the name of the DOS,
No, so Unix has its own operating systems.
which is what?
So the DOS equivalent for a Unix is called Linux. Linux.
Got it. So in parallel,
Yeah.
I see.
Linux is the operating system, a command line interface for Unix.
So essentially, like the whole hardware software dialogue is, you would say it's the same except it's in parallel, meaning PC and Windows and Apple and whatever. And
Right, but there's still software interfaces. A command line interface is still a software interface. You're typing in commands.
why are there all these different, like, I mean, I understand the competition between Apple and Microsoft, but why are
Both-
servers and
Both of
everything?
them are later entries as players. Unix is earlier. And what about, and it's not just that, there's also the IBM, write this computer down, IBM AS400, also sometimes called the IBM I. It's one of the old mainframes, now they call it a mini computer, it's a very powerful computer that preceded a lot of the other systems. You ever go into the area or Kupat Cholim, and you notice that they're clicking with a mouse, but yet the screens don't look really like Windows screens. They seem to jump from place to place. And
Yeah,
they're
it's
using
really
laptops
annoying.
tabs. So I'll tell you what's happening there. What's happening is they have old systems. A lot of times they could be an old IBM mainframe.
I saw that in the Shoot Misim also, it's a green and.
Exactly. Right. So those are the DOS screens. And what they did is they later on upgraded and put some kind of a graphical interface on top of it to make it possible to use a mouse. But they're still basically those old systems.
Oh, they're horrible.
But they are so entrenched that IBM is still developing their system. And I actually worked for a company that specialized in security for what was called the IBM I, or the AS400. And one of the features of that company is, as opposed to a bunch of young people writing code in Java, I was actually the youngest person, one of the youngest people there, because you had a lot of people in their 60s and even older that grew up with these old systems, these old mainframes, and knew how to make it do everything, how to make it speak Hungarian. And most of the work was done in command line interface. But there were more sophisticated systems that were also used, and they started offering graphical user interface systems. So this is be one of your challenges as a technical writer, but it's how you get the job, is that you were able to do this as well. Okay, let's move on. Plenty of examples here. On data screens, we're on slide 11. Okay.
What is statistics, SAS? We will learn about them.
Okay, all right, you're right, hang on.
You just breezed past that one, huh?
I did, yes, I'm gonna go to that right now. What slide is that?
Oh, 10.
10.
Okay, so we're gonna go there right now. So we already talked about software, about slide 7. We talked about the hybrid of DOS and Windows I just mentioned. That actually is just kind of a review before we go on to the next thing.
Wait, what's slide we're on 8?
We're on slide 8. We're on slide 8. So in DOS and Unix prompts, for that I'll show you an example on our installation guide. That's a good idea that we even look at that now, because that is so important. Okay.
What is this music?
I know, it's just.
No, but it's been there for
I
like
know.
3 hours now.
I think it's,
It's
I
the
think it's
same
Dr.
song.
Dre on repeat, but I don't know.
Like just instrumental.
Yeah,
Repeat. That's not-
might be instrumental, Dr.
So
Dre.
let's look at the sample
It's
manual.
driving me crazy.
Okay, let's look at the installation guide here again. Let's look for maintenance. Okay, look at the installation guide, the IMC guide. Now I think some of this will make a little bit more sense. Okay, so what you're seeing here, first of all, is showing services. These are actual commands and programs that are running on the Unix operating system for this application discovery manager.
What?
Wait, what's
What?
ADM again?
ADM is the name of the product, application discovery
Apache
manager,
Tomcat.
right?
I love hearing that.
Wait, so the ADM is,
In this case, ADM is something that I
it runs
documented.
on Linux?
Yes, it runs on Linux and has these particular services. What they're calling services are actually
These are
software
like
modules.
the DOS commands, parallel
Well, these are,
Linux commands?
let me take you step by step.
Okay.
Okay, and if I haven't answered your question, I'll go back and we'll try again. But let me take you step
Yeah,
by
well,
step
sorry,
because
I
this,
think.
there's a
I'm
certain
jumping the
logic.
gun. No, it's fine,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, but this is really very
No, it's
important.
interesting stuff, it's like, we're learning cool stuff.
Okay, so what we're calling an ADM service is actually software. They are small programs that are running on the Unix system. And you'll also see that in Windows that there are
This
certain
is
services.
a global name, ADM Services?
ADM is a brand. It's nothing
Oh.
to do with Unix. It's a particular brand because that was the product that my company sold, that EMC produced, was called the Application Discovery Manager. It's their software tool. It's what I was hired to do.
I got
And I
it,
work for
okay.
them. However, the word
But it's
service,
built on Linux?
this sits on Linux.
Sits
There-
on Linux?
Yes, it sits
Like
on
Windows?
Unix, excuse me, on the Unix system.
In parallel to Linux or on top of it?
Linux is like, think DOS.
Right,
Linux is
But then
like
you have-
DOS for a Unix system. Like DOS is
right,
to,
but then you have Windows Explorer, which is another level up from
you have
DOS.
Windows. That's
Right.
another level, not Explorer. Explorer
I mean
is the-
Windows,
yeah,
I mean
okay.
Windows, so is this on the Windows level or on the DOS level?
This would
The
be on the
ADM
equiv-
services.
This would be on the equivalent of a DOS level.
So
Li-
it's
the
still on the
Linux
DOS?
level,
I
the
got
Linux
it.
level.
Got it.
Okay? Now, I don't have to give you more information than that yet because the answer is a little bit more complex than that, but let's try to stay with this. Now, these service names, like Oracle, or the Engine, or Active Pro, these are commands. They are executable files, and they're called services because they're a particular kind of software. So, if you look Apache is a web server service. A lot of websites actually run Apache, and they're running on, a lot of them are set up on Unix, a lot of these web servers. Engine is another service. And you've got here Oracle. Oracle is not part of ADM at all. Oracle is a database service. It's a database program. I'd probably say the largest or widest used is Oracle. Microsoft has its answer to Oracle, which is SQL or SQL Server. And there's a more basic one called MySQL. VMware is, again, a brand, it's a particular product of EMC and its subsidiary company VMware. Watchdog, these are all services that were created by EMC, by VMware, by the company that I worked for. They were not part of the original Unix operating system of Linux. These were things that were sold. These were elements, these were components that were sold. Now, what I do in this table is I explain what these mean. That's what you're going to do. How are you going to know what they mean? You talk
And
to
then from
the,
the guy we,
this is where you get information from the
the
engineer.
software developers.
Right. This is where you talk to the software developer. You ask them. And before you talk to the software developers, what are you supposed to do?
Get the white paper,
Right.
get the gist of the whole picture.
Get the spec
And
also.
know that you're not raising pigs in a farm in Utah.
What? Racing pigs and
A farm in Utah, I mean, not just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
joke, but like,
yeah.
to know in the gist
Right.
of what you're doing and what the company is for and like,
Right.
whatever it is.
Exactly. So that's the stuff that you're expected to do before you get to them. Then, what do we do here? So, managing services with ADM control. So ADM underscore control is a particular script. A script is, again, it works like a command, but it's, or similar to a batch file. It's a file
It's a
that
command
has
string.
a set of commands. And that's what batch file is also. Add that to your definition for batch file. Batch file is a file that's a set of commands together, that are run together, that are executed together.
I need to make a new dictionary page. Wait, batch file like .bat?
.bat.
Wait, so what did you call this? A command string?
Right, so a command string means a whole set of letters and numbers. You could say words, except that a lot of them won't look like regular words in English. To some extent it does make sense, but it's not like plain English. What I have done here is I've made a table. What you need to understand is that there are an umpteenth amount of command possibilities.
Of course, it's a language.
It's a language.
It's like putting together sentences.
Right. So what I'm doing here, I want you to write this word also in your dictionary, is I created building blocks. I need to do what you can supposedly do. 1 page of calculus is like 5 pages of algebra, maybe like 10 pages of
Oh, I see
algebra.
what you're saying.
I'm putting together the building blocks and saying, this is how you do it. You take from this menu, in this column, like we used to say in a Chinese restaurant, you take this from column A, and this from column B, and this from column C, and show you, these are the possibilities, because if I were to show every single possibility, it would be pages and pages, and nobody would read it, and it'd be hard to find out what you're looking for.
So these are 3 general directions from where you can get more, you can add, or whoever your audience is can add more specific directions to get to whatever
Right.
solution.
So what I've done here already, let's look at this. How many terms do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 8 terms here, right? These are 8 services. So far? Now, what am I listing here? ADM service commands. I show the status, I show to stop that service, and I show how to start it up. Service has been stopped.
Oh, so where you have the service name in brackets, that's where you plug in the
Right.
8, one of the 8.
So this here, what you see in the brackets, within italics, and this is, we talked about in the style
Got it, yeah.
guide.
So it's display, stop and start and stop. That's
Right.
basically.
So what is this called here that I just highlighted? What's the service name? There's a word.
It's one of the 8 on the top.
Write it in. Variable.
Well,
This
we
is
had that
variable.
before.
You had that in the style guide, in the
Yeah.
in the preface of that document, but now actually write it in your.
So variable is the command that's
Variable is what can change, what can vary. It's a service
right. I'm
name.
just saying. Right. It's the X variable.
Yeah, exactly. Would be like the equivalent of an
A
X.
variable in a
in
command
algebra.
string is for audience input.
Yeah. So that means instead of, and how many commands, how many possibilities do I have right here?
8,
Times?
3, 24.
Exactly. Do I really want to write 24 of these?
No.
Okay, so I do it this way. Because as time goes on, I'm going to be adding more services and adding more command possibilities. And so you can. Okay. All right.
stuff is getting interesting.
Oh,
No.
wait a minute, it's not 8. Because we got 3 more. We have restart and help. Again, you see help? Just like help in DOS.
And then all.
And then all.
What's all?
What is command? Why
Apply
does
the command to
and
all
then tell
services.
us?
Because what I've done here, so it's even more than,
You can write
than-
all 8 in parallel.
it means I can be running several of these, yes.
Have an electric circuit. Like,
Right. So here I for sure have to provide this information in tables. And then what have I done
is
here?
this stuff as a technical writer, you need to know all this stuff and it's
Yes,
not.
yes. It doesn't
It's not-
mean you're going to be using these same commands.
But who gives you these commands? The app?
It depends on what level. Okay? So some of this, all right, like this, path here. And in Unix, if you notice, they use a front slash. Where else do you see a front slash?
Window.
No,
No, internet.
internet. Which is one of the pointers that you see that a lot of internet servers are actually sitting on Unix machines.
Ooh.
They use the front slash.
So, I get what you're explaining. I get that. We have command strings, we have from the 8 commands above that we can insert where we have the variables. I get all that. I get you have different functions where you can apply the service, the variable to all services or just, okay. But now, I'm still telling you I don't get it. What I don't get about this is that say I work for a company and I'm this technical writer or whatnot that's using these functions. What am I actually doing with this? I want to put, okay, I'm going to use one of the 9 things, all right? I'm going to write a command string to apply that function to that variable to all of the things.
Right.
But what am I doing with it? Can you please give me an example?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's go back up here.
Like, let's say somebody's working on like Facebook files or like marketing pictures or like, how is he actually operating with this? That's going to change something in the product, let's say pictures that he's going to use later on for some designated purpose.
Okay,
Yeah?
great. Great question. So let's have a look. What I've done here is I have described the services in the command strings, right? So far.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you look at this table of contents and maintenance, the next thing I'm going to do is jump to page 55 and describe product support package. So here I write product support packages that create a backup, restore, and troubleshoot. Now, why is that? Because if you have a customer and got into trouble, and at the customer support, you want to know what went wrong. You want some kind of a snapshot of their computer. A snapshot of their database to try to figure out what went wrong. So I'm on the phone or in a chat, I will tell the customer to run this very specific command. And I will type it out for him or her to run this very specific command that will create a snapshot and then will send that snapshot to me. So I, at customer support, can look at your
Of their
computer
whole
and see-
PC?
or whatever it is I'm trying to troubleshoot. So we call it a product support package. That was the marketing people at EMC that branded it and said, we're going to call it a product support package because it sounds a lot better.
Of course it does, that's the marketing part of technical writing.
Exactly. So here, the way it runs is the way to do it is a technical question. The name, that's a branding. That's a branding question that the marketing people decided this is, and the product managers, let's call it that because it sounds good.
So you're just saying that it's just kind of like in Microsoft Word that it auto-saves every so often? So
Not
before
exactly,
anything
yeah.
crashes, it kind of,
Right, but I think we're going a little bit off of her question. I understand what you're saying, but I want to kind of focus as much as we can on Tamar's question because it's an excellent question. So here I'm telling the users how to create a product support package. And then I explain what it is. And then I go down here and I say, VMware, because by the time this one came out, our whole division was shifted to VMware.
What
the
exactly is
subsidiary.
VMware?
VMware is a daughter company, a subsidiary of EMC.
Okay.
They specialize in virtual machines.
And EMC is also just.
EMC is a huge storage and application company. One of the big ones. Like they're together like with Cisco and actually they work all three of them in tandem, Cisco and VMware and EMC.
Okay.
So Cisco, as you know, just acquired the whole NDS system in Israel, which is a huge company to begin with. It was originally Rupert Murdoch.
What's an NDA?
It was data systems. They make all the smart cards and all technology for pay TV, both in Israel and abroad. Like DirecTV in America is NDS.
Yeah?
And now Cisco owns all of that. So Cisco and EMC and VMware work together. Even though Cisco was actually a separate company. So what I say here is VMware, meaning the company I work for, recommends that you create and save a support package prior to performing any maintenance procedures.
Oh, I see.
So partial answer to your question, Tamara, is what are you going to do with it? Right here I'm saying you need to create the support package. How do you create that support? I have to convince you as a writer, I have to be persuasive, convince you have to create these. Every time you want to do anything serious, back it up, back up the system. If something goes wrong, first of all, you can restore the system. If something really goes wrong, then customer support people can help you restore, the tech support people can help you restore the system because you've created this package, this database, before you did anything serious. I'm already answering part of your question. Why are we giving this information, essentially? How do we do something? Where do we go from here? Where we go from here is, I showed some basic commands, how to do it, and here I'm telling you the why. Because you need to create a support package. It's one thing. I go further, and now I say already, backing up and creating a support package. So what I've done here is, first of all, I've established that you need to create a support package, and why.
Package contains troubleshooting log files that are used to restore.
It means that when you do it, you actually download something on your PC to make it accessible and understandable to the technical support.
Well, not just the technical support, but it packages it in such a way that you can restore it afterwards. It's basically backup and restore. But the reason we also call it a support package is because if you get in trouble along the way, someone else can use that to restore your system. So I've already told you in the previous page why you need to do it, why you should do it, we recommend. And now I'm explaining what it is. The backup of the ADM and relevant configuration files. I'm being a little bit gray here, a little bit foggy here, because maybe the reader is not on that level of sophistication. But what I'm telling the reader is this is important. You need to do this.
Can I ask you a question?
No.
First of all, my question is still
I want to first see
answered.
if we are be done with tomorrow
I'm
first.
not feeling
Okay,
good
go ahead.
about it.
Okay.
My point is, from what you said before, my understanding is that you're saying, well, we all have computers that have, Windows and whatever, and we might as well use Windows and do the same functions that we do on the command line, what is it called? Command line interface. But it's useful doing this if we're working with big chunks, and then it makes sense to work on a command line interface. That's what I understood from what you were saying.
Okay, all right. So let me fill in what's missing here. The heavier systems, the servers, no matter what else you're using, no matter what your terminals could be Windows, running on a Dell computer, for instance, which is what they did. Your terminals could also be some other system. It could be a virtual machine. But ultimately, the whole system, the base of the whole system, the back end of the whole system is a Unix machine. You're right, I'm giving alternatives to work either
That's
with.
not my question,
Okay.
though. I don't. That's
You
why
have-
I'm sorry. I
okay.
need-
You gotta give a
My-
real life example of
Yes, I want to
how
see-
your guide here is applicable in real life, who uses it, when, and in what way.
Okay, who uses it is when I
Like,
describe
how
the
can you
audience.
see it afterwards? Let's say you applied one of these functions. Okay,
Okay.
I'm doing something on my computer, whatever
Right.
it is. I want to
Okay.
do something.
Right.
I'm in the command line interface. I apply some certain variable
Mhm.
on my code line or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
What do I see after? I want to see it. I want to virtually be able to see it on the, what have I done with it? I press enter and I don't want to do backup. I don't want to back up my files. I got backup. I got that. I want to do something. I want to apply some service and then I want to see it. Let's say I apply that I want to move 200 pictures and I want to move it to that file location.
Well, that's easy to get that, and there it's very easy because
Like, I
you just because you just give the commands for how to do it, and in your getting started section that we're going to start working on, that's what you're going to do. In this case, we're not writing for somebody who is just going to move pictures and just click and drag and drop through Windows.
So let's go to this case. What are the people doing with it that buy that software? What are they doing?
That buy this software. So in order to do that, we actually need to go back to who the audience is. Okay, which is very important. Okay,
Oh yeah, I think she missed this. She wasn't here when we.
you weren't here for this class, for that class. That's now I understand. In here, I defined the audience. Were you here for the audience lecture also?
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm gonna catch you up on that also. All right, that's why you're asking the question.
I just like want to know.
Okay, no, okay, all right, thank you, Eric. And after this, we're gonna take a break already. All right, so what I'm saying here is that this is used by system administrators and integrators responsible for installing. And it said that the procedures must be performed by IT professionals that know what virtualization is, that are familiar with VMware technologies, such as these servers and related virtual and physical equipment. You're not one of these people. It's okay. You will still be able to, by the time you finish this class, you'll be able to write for those people, even though you're not one of those people yourself.
You're installing software, you're starting programs, you're stopping programs, you are moving files, you are absolutely. If you need to see it, it's just I'm telling you, like there is software that runs behind your screen.
And this Unix software is that.
And that's the kind of programs, that's the kind of software that you're starting and stopping with this. If you can run it in front of your screen, you can install it in front of your screen, but not all software that runs behind your screen, you can install in front of your screen.
And you can't necessarily see all of that either.
And why some kind of company that's using this software, why do they want to stop some program that's working behind the screen? For what reason and what effect is it gonna have?
To service it, and that's what you're going, and that's what
It's
you're.
what?
Servicing,
Of
you
what?
need to service, you need to upgrade
Of what?
of the program that's running behind the screen. You have a program, call it Pac-Man, running behind the screen. You don't see it, you're still working on your Windows and your Word, which Word is mounted on Windows, which is mounted on DOS. Thus far? Yeah. Okay. But on DOS, you have your Windows, and that's your screen. But on DOS, there's Pac-Man running, tick, 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 chasing the ghosts.
And you don't see it.
So you want to turn it off to improve your performance.
Right.
For example, or you
So
want
you
to turn
wanna
it off
type in
because
a
there's a
command
new
that says
version
stop
of
Pac-Man.
Guys, I
Pac-Man.
just had a fantastic business idea.
That's running
Right.
Pac-Man behind.
Like, I don't know, like I Steve Jobs and all these people, they're crazy. Why do they put 5 different programs on top of each other? I'm gonna invent a computer that works on one thing, simple. No layers, no balagan,
Can't work this one.
easy. No, I'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll get there.
I wish you good luck.
Let's
Is
take a
that,
break,
yeah,
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
We'll need a break. What? You don't want a break?
I think it's just continue.
Good, good. think
So
that's something.
racist.
Okay,
Yeah, all those French
It's not
people know each
racism.
other.
French is not a race.
okay, let's try to rush to the exercise, then you'll have more time to schmooze and what have you. Anyway, tomorrow, we're going to cover more of this as we go on, but this was just meant to be an overview on what command line interface is. So I'm going back to the slides. Okay,
Interface, why did you separate those words?
Because it's in your face,
in your face, oh, yeah, okay.
rudeness.
Okay. Anyway, so you have prompts. Prompts are what they give you. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we do a little bit more of DOS. And where I want to jump to is what we're going to write here. Get this already. Come back to this slide later. Data screens, you write in, you have screens, you have menus and submenus, and shortcuts and navigation, and what you write is how to. We're on slide 11. And you had to choose options, how to enter data. These are buzzwords. You'll refer back to these slides when you start writing. You use these terms, what a screen is, what a menu or a submenu is. And some of this is pretty intuitive. Okay, and of course there's some people that want to take shortcuts. So the rabbit wants to know if they can get there any faster.
Wait, what slide was that, 11?
Slide 11.
Wait, why did we just zoom through it?
Okay, all right, so we'll start again on it. On a data screen, what are you writing about a data screen as a technical
What is
writer?
a data screen?
A data screen is like what I just showed you before of
Showed us a
the
lot.
Google form. Okay, yeah, let's go back here to the form. Wait a minute. This is a data screen. This is
Oh, it could
information.
be
making.
anything. It
Yeah.
could be any,
Absolutely anything.
I see what you're saying. Sorry, I was
Okay.
just, my mind was locked on,
And what's in
DOS
that?
window.
And for me, that looks like a questionnaire and not like a data. Like, why is it a data screen?
Because it's where you enter information, or where information is displayed for you. Either you're typing in information, or choosing information, or the screen is giving you information. It's usually both.
Okay.
So, what do you write about it? You describe the screens, what they are. What you write about is you describe the menus and the submenus and what they mean. This is your assignment, so I'm going to wait until everybody's totally on here.
I'm listening.
No, you actually need to see this, because this is your assignment. So, okay, so the menus and submenus, you describe what those menus are, what the submenus are, what they do,
Of what?
Meaning one by one?
of any software,
What?
of any software. What you as a technical writer have to do is describe the screen. You have to describe what each menu is. Let's say that you have a file menu, you have a home menu on Word.
And you describe each of the submenus as well?
And you have to describe it. I'm not saying that's what you're going to have to do right now, but that's what in general you have to be prepared to do. To describe what the menus are, what the submenus are, what they do. If there are shortcuts, you show what the shortcuts are, like, Control P for print, it's a shortcut. How you navigate, how you move around. You move around by clicking a mouse, you move around with a scroll bar, you move around with arrow keys. In the original DOS, even arrow keys weren't supported very well. And how to do these things. How to choose an option. Like, how do you choose an option on this data form? There are different ways. Okay, look at this up here. So here I have a radio button, I can choose only one of them. How do I choose it? Somebody tell me?
Clicking.
Click.
How'd you know that?
It's smart.
Because the technical writer explained it to them, or in this case it was pretty intuitive. I also would say in how to choose an option that you have to choose one of the following. Can I choose more than one of these?
No.
So it's a radio button. On the other hand, what about
How is
here?
that indicated?
By the shape. It's a circle, so that's a radio button.
That's standard.
Yeah, that's standard. And you have variations of it. You'll see on dialog boxes that you'll see a circle, and when you click on one of the options in the circle, that you'll see a blue light in that option, and if you click on something else, it will move. You won't be able to click on two at the same time.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's why the other ones are squares.
Right.
Unless you have two mouse. You have two mice.
No, it still won't work. You can have two mice. I can plug in another mouse to another.
Yeah, but you still
pointer.
won't have two cursors.
That's true.
Michael
Okay.
dreams in duplicate.
Right. All right. So here I can choose one, and this is called a radio button. You have that in your dictionary, ready? Radio button.
Yeah.
And then this is called a checkbox. What does this mean? If it's a checkbox?
Then you can choose more than one option.
Right. Okay. And then you have a text field. Type in the word field. It's a text field, a free text field. That's something you should write in your dictionary, free text field.
But it's not always free.
So you like,
No, but in this case it is. There are a few other options that I'm not showing here, like a combo box. But I'll show you some examples for a combo box.
I worked with them, remind me.
A combo box is when you have a menu, you also have drop-down menus. A combo box is a form of a list that you can choose one from the list. But better to, I'm trying to keep things simple. There's a lot of information that I'm throwing at you already for this one time. We're going to have another lecture that continues this next week. So these are free text fields. So what I have done is, as a technical writer, you write how to choose options. We're slide 11. You also write how to enter data. You can say type in your phone number, right? That's how to enter data, because that's in this free text field. You type in your phone number. In some data entry forms, you may have to first choose the prefix, right? The area code, like 050 or 02, right? So I will actually as a writer, I'll tell the user how to do that, how to choose. The user will still enter his or her own information, but I have to write down how to do that. And messages meaning messages you're getting back from the software. Dialogue means it's two-way communication. So I describe what those messages mean, what to do about them. Okay. Now, we're on slide 12. In a graphical user interface, you have these terms. You have platforms. Platform means the overall system, which means both the hardware and the software. So one platform is the web, HTML. Is a main base platform. And that means, doesn't matter, you're sitting on your PC or on your Macintosh, but you're accessing something else on the internet. So for you, it's just the internet. It doesn't matter that website is sitting on Unix or it's sitting on something else. You're accessing it from here. What you just see is it's a web platform. And of course, as we said, Unix. Right? Slide 12. And the Mac and Windows.
Now, why do we know so much? I mean, we know where Apple is headquartered. We know the Windows name. We hear about Bill Gates all the time. Why is Unix such an unfamiliar brand? It's not known where.
Because it's used for in a more sophisticated tech environment, and in many ways it's simpler.
And all the servers
And much
are
more
in
powerful.
Scandinavia.
Is that
Much
true?
more powerful.
so,
Is that true?
what, sorry?
What with all the servers in Scandinavia, because it's cold and they don't need to pay for cooling.
Well, I noticed that people that come from colder countries are often work very well in Israel as system administrators. And that's because when you walk into the server room, you need a heavy jacket even in the summer because they're
Really cool.
The rooms are very cold.
The simple answer, instead of sophisticated, I would use the word extreme nerds. Those people that really know computers, they will use Linux. Linux is basically, it's like, you got sand and you got water and you know how to build a building. You know how to code, you use Linux. If you're savvy, you use Linux. If you have the patience and the time as well, because it is literally, it's building blocks. You just have to build your own computer, software-wise. You can do it
We're
hardware-wise.
going to have a great shot at explaining to people. Because I've listened to the way you've answered some of these questions yourself. This is what technical writers need to do, to give those kind of answers. Okay. And of course, do people remember these PDAs, Androids and cell phones? Or they remember the old Palm Pilots and the other gadgets that preceded smartphones? And
I had a BlackBerry back in the day.
yeah. So BlackBerry was like one of the earlier smartphones also, before you had touch screens. So graphical user interface is similar to data screens, but more use of a mouse and buttons and icons. Data screens could be what I showed you before, this Google form, but data screens could also be what you see in the municipalities or in a bank or in Kupat Kolim, where they're literally working with a very DOSy type interface, where they're just entering in data.
Wait, what?
Yeah?
That's a question?
What's the difference between a platform and a data screen? Is that it's more...
A data screen is where you enter the information.
What do you mean
and a-
platform is similar to
It's
data?
what it sits on. It's what it sits on.
Virtually speaking.
Okay. Oh, all right. I understand the confusion. A data screen sitting on a
A GUI sits on a data screen?
A data
No.
screen can sit. First of all, when I talk about a platform is something like Windows or DOS.
It's an operating
It's
system?
it's an operating system, but a platform can mean something a little bit more than that, because sometimes you actually have software that you run on an operating system, and then you may have something else that runs on top of that as well. You may have more layers. So platform is more of a generic term. When I talk about data screens, though, data screens can come in all types. Data screens can even exist in a DOS or a Unix, Linux environment, because even if it's not a graphical user interface, those old screens that you see at City Hall were there before there was Windows.
Okay, but
And they
why is
already
this under
created-
graphical user interface? I don't understand.
Okay.
Because the data screens do not have graphical user.
All right, look over here. In the old system, let's say you wanted to pay your Arnona, right, your municipal tax. So they ask you, what's your Tudat Zahud, right? What's your ID number? Get your information. So here's the screen. You typed in your ID number, 123. And the moment that you did that, and then at the side of the key, you have an enter key, right? The person at the municipality hit the enter key right here, and information was displayed. And let's say now that clerk wants to take a payment. So the clerk took a payment. Let's say you paid 100 shekels. Here, there's a payment screen. It says 100 shekels. Before there was more use of mouse and the use of a GUI, of a graphical user interface, these screens already existed. That clerk already wasn't just typing in commands. There was some kind of a screen that you could navigate, and back then, it would mean hitting the tab key, hitting the enter key, arrows, back arrow, front arrow. You still can do that. You can still use tab in many cases, or you can do a shift tab to go backwards. So the difference between that and and the modern graphical user interface is that now you're using a mouse.
I understand.
And in the case of Office, you see that they're using mouse buttons and icons and ribbons. That's something that when Office started coming in 2007 and 2010 came out. That's a new concept, and it's a bit of a hybrid. Now we're used to it. When it first came out, people were shocked.
What was,
The idea of ribbons.
What is it?
Ribbons are new.
Oh, the
What
tabs.
are
Yeah.
ribbons?
What's a ribbon?
A ribbon is, let's say you have Word, for instance. Although even Paint uses that now. Let's even look at PowerPoint. This is called a ribbon. It's kind of a hybrid between a menu that's up here and you have icons and toolbar, and it's all together. On the other hand, if you want something that's more traditional, look at Notepad. So Notepad just has menus. Nothing graphical at all, it's the traditional menus.
So there's no ribbon in there.
Right, now let's say I open up Acrobat. Okay? Let's look
So
at
that's a
Acrobat.
ribbon?
They're starting to work a little bit like ribbons, but at the moment they're still working in the traditional menu system. So you see here menus, file menu, you have these, edit menu, you have these choices. These are the sub-menus. You know, some of them you see icons. And then you have here toolbars.
Another question.
Right. So what you have to do when getting started is to describe some of these menus. What I'm going to have you do is a small exercise in class, and I want to jump into it. I'll answer your question, but I want you to actually get your feet on, your hands and feet on that. My apologies. Turn off this buzzer. Sorry.
Just quick question.
Mhm.
Is it true that we could have no graphical user interface if there was no software or no operating system working in the background, no DOS or Linux or whatever in that case?
You always have an you'll always have an operating
Is
system in
it
the
true that
background.
we can have that a graphical interface cannot work without the system?
Yes.
Like that?